All right, so before you do your first class, there's a few important things that you need to know. I go into everything that I'm about to explain to you in far more detail in the subscriptions, but you need to have a base level understanding of a few important concepts before doing that first class. This will help you make sure that you know what you're doing, how to do it, what certain words that I say in the class mean, and help make sure that you don't make any pre-existing problems worse. Our nervous systems play a very large role in our mobility. It's constantly monitoring the positions and ranges of motion that you are strong, the ranges of motion that you actually use, the positions and ranges of motions you've injured yourself in, where you're weak, where you're vulnerable, and so on. It then uses this information to decide how much access to our range of motion to grant us, or how much access to length to give us in certain tissue. So with that being the case, we use the nervous system to our advantage in this type of training. One term that you're going to hear me use is the term irradiation. You can think of that like self-created internal body tension, so flexing the muscles in your body. We do this for a few different reasons. One is because it increases neural drive to the tissue that we're training. So for this class, when we're training the hip, if we actually irradiate and tense up the rest of our body, we're going to get more neural drive. Our nervous system is going to send more signal to our hip when we do that specific exercise. It's also going to get more tissue involved so that we get a better training effect. It also helps to solidify our body such that we don't use and compensate with other joints when we're trying to isolate the hip. Two other terms that you're going to hear me refer to are PAILs and rails. That stands for progressive angular isometric loading and regressive angular isometric loading. It's a mouthful, you don't have to worry about it. Again, if you want to learn more, we teach you that in the subscription. But for now, just know that PAILs means that we're generating force with and loading the tissue that's in a lengthened state, which is the tissue that's keeping you from getting any further into that stretch. With the rails, we're then switching and taking all of that force and sending it to the tissue that's in a shortened state, which is the tissue that pulls us deeper into that stretch. Now with the PAILs, there's a few things that you should know. You're going to hear me go from 20% effort, 40, 60, 80, and even to 100. And what I'm asking for from you there is to slowly squeeze that tissue, and I'll tell you what tissue you're targeting, and slowly increase the amount of force that you're generating with that tissue, in addition to having the rest of your body irradiated like we discussed earlier. What you do not want to do with that is go from 0 to 100. That being said, this is a skill. It's a skill that takes practice. You might not be great at it the first few times that you do it, and that's okay. It will come with time. But think of it like slowly turning up a volume dial on your hip, but instead of volume, it's muscle contraction. Do not crank it. You want to slowly increase to demonstrate control to your nervous system, which will help create better changes and help your nervous system be more okay with what we're doing. After that, when we switch to rails, you're going to take all the tension that you've just developed and you're going to send it into the tissue that's in a shortened position, again, that pulls you deeper into that stretch. Now, if you've never trained that tissue before in that position, you might get a cramp. So if you get that cramp, don't worry, it will not harm you, but that is just neurological confusion. That means that your nervous system has no clue how to use the tissue in that position. As you develop more control, more strength, and teach your nervous system over time how to use that tissue there, you're going to notice those cramps start to dissipate, but I won't sugarcoat it. They are uncomfortable, but just know that they're not causing you any harm. Now, with that being said, this class is a class that I filmed for the people in my subscription. So I take them up to max effort in this class. But if this is your first time doing a Kinstretch class or doing a class like this for your hips, you do not need to go to max effort in that first class. And I actually recommend sticking around like 50, 60%. So once I start climbing everybody up in the class, as I approach like that 60% mark, you can just stay there for the rest of that set. You don't have to go higher, but as you come back to this class and do it consistently over time, then you can start squeezing a little bit more, generating more tension, and making your way towards the max effort. So you don't have to go right to 100 if it's your first time doing it. Please know that. And if you feel any pain or any discomfort, you'll also want to scale that back. Okay, make sure we don't want to be sending off any alarms for our nervous system. Again, our nervous system only likes ranges of motion and things that we can do without pain. So if you're pushing through pain and you're pushing yourself too much, your nervous system is going to retract that rather than give that range of motion to you. That brings me to the last point that I wanted to touch on, which is something called closing angle pain. I honestly just want you to keep this class entirely pain-free for the same reason that I touched on earlier. Your nervous system's always monitoring where you get pain, where we start to insult the body. And if you're causing pain and you're insulting the body, you're going to be less likely to get access to that range of motion over time, and you'll actually be moving yourself in the wrong direction. So you want to reduce the range of motion, stay in the positions that you can do it in without pain. Now, closing angle pain refers to when two bones are moving together and we get any discomfort or pain on the angle that is being closed off. So to use my hip for an example, if I'm flexing my hip and I get any discomfort on this side of the joint, so in the front of my hip here, that's not okay. That would be considered a closing angle issue, in which case I'm going to lower my hip down or bring my knee down towards the ground to reduce that angle and make sure that I don't get any symptoms in the front of this hip. So you'll want to adjust that as needed in the class, and I'll also walk you through modifications for certain positions and exercises that we do. But general rule of thumb, until you have a better understanding of those types of things and what's okay and what's not okay, what's closing angle and what's open angle, again, which is stuff that we go through in the subscriptions, just try to keep it entirely pain-free. So that's it. I'll leave it at that. I'll let you get on to the class. After class, shoot me a DM on Instagram at coach_Alex Murphy and let me know how it went. Enjoy.